Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be making this adorable little kitten out of felt, and with Christmas just around the corner we can turn them easily into a cute ornament or just keep them on your desk. There could never be enough cats in the house, right? Anyway, let's jump in. Here's everything we'll be using today. And of course we're going to need our pattern, and I will link the PDF in the description. To print that out at 100%, it's going to be 3 by 4 inches. So if you want it to be a little bigger, scale it up. Okay, so this is for the materials. Let's start cutting our felt. I'm going to start with the body. We're going to pin it to the fabric. Make sure it fits. And then I'm going to trace it with my marker, just slightly. Enough. And then what I like to do is cut out the big shape first, and then go in and concentrate on the details. Just easier this way. And when you cut, make sure you're cutting inside your drawn line so it doesn't show. And then for the second body part, you can trace it again, or you can just pin your first piece. I would use 2 pins for this one, so the tail doesn't wiggle around when you cut. And just kind of cut around this first shape. Again, starting out with the bigger shape, going around. So here's our body. Looks like a little horse or dinosaur. Okay, so now we're gonna do the head and the rest of the parts. And then for tiny pieces like this eye over here, I use the pattern more like a reference. So I just take my piece of fabric, cut off a small piece, and just try to cut a circle that is similar in size. So the nose also, and the ear triangles right here. So basically they're just little triangles. So what I like to do is just take my piece of fabric, cut off a triangle. This one is pretty big, so kind of again match it to the pattern. There's one. Oh, look, this looks like a little doggy. And same thing with the nose. So basically it's a triangle around the triangle shape. So I'm gonna cut a larger triangle and then just round the corners, trying to keep it more or less a triangle shape. The ears and the nose. Okay, so I have my pieces all cut out. They're all here in the container, safe and sound. And I'm gonna start with the body. And I like to cut out the picture of the toy so I know what I'm doing. I like to use double thread, but so that there's one loose piece hanging at the end. So basically you have 4 here. I find that if you tie both of them or all of them at the end, then the thread starts bubbling when you stitch, and it just creates knots and more headache than you need. So I'm gonna start here just underneath the belly where the front leg begins, and we're gonna do blanket stitch in the way you started. So you go in between the pieces to hide the knot and just shove it back in there. And then on your second poke, you don't go all the way through both of the pieces, but you go through one and come out in the middle between them. This way you're gonna have a nice start. And then on your next stitch, you're going all the way through, and then you move your thread around the needle to create this loop. Watch out for the knots. So, and it looks very nice. And just keep going. Okay, so at this point, I want to start filling the tail, because when you have parts of your animal that are thin and long, they will be difficult to reach. Like if I stitch all the way around here, it's going to be hard to get into that corner. So I'm going to use the pipe cleaner just because it's easier. You can stuff it too if you don't have pipe cleaners, or you can just leave it without any stuffing because it's thin enough. But let me show you what happens when you try to stuff it. So when you have a thin body part to fill, you want to twist it a little bit so it doesn't fluff too much. And I have a skewer too. I have a chopstick and a skewer, so I think the skewer will work better in this case because it's so sharp. So you can do this and it works fine. So it is doable, but it's kind of difficult and it likes to stick out, the stuffing. But here you can, if you did this, well, it's okay, it works. But I want to show you the pipe cleaner method as well. So here you would just continue doing your blanket stitch around this. So I'm going to take this out, and so you would take the pipe cleaner and fold it in half, maybe twist it, and just put it inside the tail. And it kind of works like stuffing. If you feel like it's too thin, you can add a little more stuffing, but I'm gonna leave it like this and just stitch around it. The color of the pipe cleaner doesn't really matter because we're going to hide it and it's not gonna show. So now it's time to fill it up. I'm gonna leave the thread hanging without finishing it, and I'm gonna start with the legs. And you don't have to make it too fat, just nice and plump. So I think this is good. So I'm gonna finish stitching. Make sure your stuffing doesn't stick out. And for the last stitch, what you wanna do is do your loop once and twice. Oh no, I got a knot. Watch out for the knots. The main thing with the knots is try not to tighten them, but kind of carefully see what's going on there and either go in with a needle or kind of loosen it up with the fingers. So anyway, once your knot is out, you want to make sure you tighten it really well. And then what I like to do is go in some other random place and cut the thread here, so you can pull it a little tighter and cut, and then it goes back inside and you don't have any loose ends. Here we have our body. Now we can do the head. So whenever you begin working on a head, you need to think ahead a little bit and think whether there will be some stitching, because we want to hide all the stitches on the inside before we put together the head. So let's see, let's plan our head. So all these elements I'm going to glue onto the head, but I want to make the mouth and the whiskers. I'd like to stitch. So I'm gonna start by gluing the nose, but the thing with this glue, it needs some time to set, like maybe 10-15 minutes. Let's mark the nose, location of the nose lightly. This is gonna be the middle. So I like to glue the elements at the very end. The nose I'm gonna put in so it's easier for me to do the mouth stitching, so I know where the mouth goes. So I'm gonna put the nose in, press it in, and then just let it sit for a bit. And meanwhile, we're gonna prep our eyes. So the eyes, I mean, they're cute as is, but if you want to go a little extra, I always like to add, if you're using colored iris, I like to add a dab of black with my fine Sharpie, and then a small stitch of white that gives that reflection that we have in our eyes when animals have in the eyes. It just brings the face to life, and I love to add those details, but you can skip those. So the way I do it, take the eye and just use the Sharpie and you shouldn't, so when you draw it doesn't work very well. So what you need to do, you just do this stippling technique and just kind of do it several times. And it's difficult to handle, that's why you can skip it, but I like to suffer. So here's one eye. And now I'm gonna put them on to the whites. And now I'm gonna use my white thread to add that tiny stitch of white. What I do, just take them together. I have my knot. Just poke through and make one tiny stitch. And if it's not very visible, just go back and do another one just in the same place to make it a little fatter. And that's it. And now it looks much more alive. And then you can do your finishing stitch in the back. And same thing with the other eye. Also, when you do the second eye, try to put it in the same place as you did the first one. Okay, so the nose I think is holding pretty well. So I'm gonna use a marker, again just a Crayola washable marker, but I'm choosing a color that's similar to my cat's color, just so when we stitch over it, it's not so visible. So I'm just gonna mark it ever so slightly, just as a guide for myself. I'm barely touching the fabric. So I'm gonna go down and then to the side and a little bit up to make this little smile. Here we go. So I'm gonna stick my needle in right between the nose and the headpiece, just a little bit underneath the nose. And we're gonna use the back stitch. And this is what it looks like. So you go forward once. And I'm gonna use very tiny stitches. So this is kind of the embroidery part. And then you go forward from behind. Pull it out. And then you come back and put your needle exactly into the spot before. I'm gonna do one more stitch here, so go forward. And come back into the same spot. Okay, like this. And now we need to go to the side, so I'm gonna go to the right. I'm just gonna do one that's just perpendicular. Go back here. And now I need to make him smile, so I need to go at an angle. And go back here. And here we go, I have half of the smile. And now I'll go to the other side and try to match it. So one stitch that is straight. And one stitch at an angle. And here we go. We have a smiling cat. He's barely smiling, but that's what cats usually do, right? Okay, so I'm gonna do a small finishing stitch here. Make sure your needle doesn't come through to the other side. And now we're gonna do the whiskers. Again, feel free to mark them if you want. I'm just gonna wing it. Just gonna look at my example. So it's between the nose and the mouth, and there's a little bit of distance, so I'm gonna put my needle somewhere here, right from the behind. Like this. And then make it this long. And kinda straighten your thread so there are no bubbles or anything. And then go back and make another whisker. And make sure you don't tighten too much, because then this happens. I want to gather the fabric. And here's the second whisker. And at this point you can do another finishing stitch, just to make sure, because when you make big jumps from one part of the fabric to the other, there's more chance that it's gonna do this. And now let's mirror our whiskers. Here we go. And the rest of the face I like to do after I'm done stitching the head, so I'm gonna put this away for now. And now let's stitch the head together. Okay, so when you start stitching the head, make sure you try it on to the body. Actually want to mark where it's gonna fit in, so we need to mark the beginning of the stitch and the end. So I'm gonna take my marker and I'm gonna mark on the inside here. Okay, so that mark is in place. And now we're gonna do the second mark on the inside. And now we can stitch the head. Looking for my marker, it's right here. So I'm gonna start my blanket stitch. I've sewn to my marker, and I'm gonna let my thread hang, and we're gonna fill up this little head. I don't want to fill it all the way to the edge because we need to fit it onto the body. So let's try and see where it's gonna go. I think maybe just a little bit more. And at this point, you need to decide which way the kitty is gonna go. To the right or to the left. I want him to go to the right, which in Western culture means forward. So I'm gonna attach it like this. I'm gonna add a little more stuffing. Make sure you have stuffing in all around, and maybe a little more in here. Again, poke it a little bit so to get rid of all the fuzzy stuff. And now I'm gonna attach it like this. I'm gonna pin it through. Make sure you don't poke yourself. The way you attach the stitch is a little different. So the first stitch usually goes right across your previous stitch, and then you go at a diagonal and pull it out. Again, stick your needle right underneath, right across your previous stitch, and then angle your needle and pull it out at a diagonal. And this way you get nice even vertical stitches. You can move your pin. Our finishing stitch, and just double up one of the existing ones right here, for instance. Do 1, 2, tighten really well, and then hide it somewhere. And here we go. The head is in place, so now we're gonna glue the rest of the face and then attach the back legs. We're almost done. So before you attach the eyes, take a look at how you made them, because sometimes when you attach the iris, you see mine are a little bit closer to one side, so you need to decide if you wanted your kitten to look up or down. Just make sure they both do the same thing, otherwise it's gonna be a little wacky, unless that's what you want. Feel free to do that as well. So I want mine to look down, so I'm gonna do this. Okay, let's get our glue. They say I want it to look down. It's a little tricky because it's so tiny. I like them to go with an angle. This glue dries clear, so if you have a little bit sticking out, it's not a big deal. Okay, the ears will go here. So here we go. Our face is done. And now we just need to sew up the legs and attach them to the back. So the legs are pretty straightforward. I'm gonna start at the top. The top is a little fatter. And do my blanket stitch all around. Since I already have my leg with the thread, so I'm just gonna attach it to the body. Let's see where it's gonna go. This looks pretty good. I would just make sure that the back leg does not go below the front leg, otherwise it's gonna look a little awkward. So I'm gonna pin it like this. All the way through. And then check it again. Looks good to me. Turn it around and we're gonna do our straight and diagonal stitch. So first you go in across, straight across your previous stitch, and then move to the diagonal. And what I like to do, if there are already stitches in the part that you're attaching, I kind of try to trace the existing stitches so there aren't too many extra stitches. And then for finishing stitches, if possible, I try to hide them where they're not going to be as visible. So for instance here, two elements are coming together, so there's a little hiding place in there, so I'm just going to make my finishing stitch in here. Here we go. And now we're going to do the same thing with the last leg. And same thing with the back leg. So here we go. Here's our little kitten. So now if we'd like to turn it into an ornament, all we need to do is take some thread with a needle and poke him in this ear. Just go all the way through. Cut off the thread here and tie it together. And then cut off the extra. And then you can kind of move it to hide the knot behind the ear. And just like that, he became an ornament. And I like to use dark green thread just because it disappears in the tree. This one also matches his eyes. But you can use whatever color thread you have. The reason I put the thread through this here is so he's hanging more or less straight. Because if you put the thread through this middle of his head, he's going to be at an angle. And I like him to be more straight. So I found this here works best. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know in the comments how I can improve, or who would you like to make next.